Andrew Parr here, Research Director to the board. So I'll be presenting here on two related topics, the indicators of the Educational System Health Report, and then the national and peer state comparisons for a second part of the Educational System Health Report. Of the board's responsibilities, this report's included in those under the green highlighted cell there. I've organized this presentation into two parts. Part one will review the Educational System Health Report, and you'll see that the system is currently underperforming compared to the aspirational goals. Only one of the indicators is on track to meet the long-term goals, and the system continues to produce highly disparate outcomes based on race, ethnicity, and program participation. Part two will cover the national and peer state comparisons that we're required to make to fulfill the obligations under the statute. This presentation will cover a lot of data, but at a fairly high level. Before the meeting, please take a look at the draft indicators of the report and review the memo in the national and peer state comparisons that are included in the materials. Here are our partner agencies, and we've expanded our partners in the work to include the Educational Research and Data Center, the Department of Youth, Children, and Families, and we've included school district directors and a school principal. So on the statewide indicators of system health, the authorizing legislation specifies three main tasks for the state board. One is setting long-term goals for each of the indicators. Number two, reporting on the status of each of the indicators. And then three, to recommend reforms intended to bolster the educational outcomes of the underperforming indicators. Don't try to read this on the computer screen. This is included just for reference that you can look at a later time. The long-term goals we set are aligned with the statewide goals in the ESSA plan. The long-term goal for all of the student groups is 90%. So now we're going to start looking at some of the data. I'm going to move through the data fairly quickly, but I will pause for a few moments after each slide. If you want to study the slide more carefully, please pause your recording and you should be able to process the data a little more effectively. If you have questions about any of the slides, send me an email note and I'll answer before the meeting, or you can ask questions at the meeting. So the bottom line here is the educational outcomes are mostly improving, but not fast enough. This slide summarizes the performance of the indicators. The Readiness for College coursework is the only indicator currently on track to meet the long-term goals, and that indicator is indicated by the green star. The high school graduation indicator is improving, but not fast enough. The fourth grade reading indicator is mostly unchanged over the three most recent years, while the eighth grade math indicator actually declined a little bit over the three most recent years. I want to point out here that the unit of measurement of this work is the state educational system using the all students group. This is not a report about student groups, but we are required to report on student groups. In the report, we framed the reporting of student groups in the context of disparate educational outcomes as part of a systemic societal inequities. Again, this is not about the performance of different groups. The report is meant to focus on the statewide educational system. This slide can be a little challenging to read, but it includes all of the detailed breakouts of performance by race, ethnicity, and by program participation. The green boxes represent areas where we are meeting or exceeding the annual steps needed to reach the goal. The gray boxes represent improvements, but below the annual increase needed to reach the goal. And then the purple boxes represent declines, areas where we're heading in the wrong direction. So the kindergarten readiness indicator and the readiness for college coursework, these are the best performing indicators. And you see that those are the two on the far left and the far right, and they have the most green and gray with those. Remember, the green and gray is improvement, and the green is improvement above the annual step. You can see the high school graduation indicator, that would be the second from the right. That's improving a little bit, and that's where you see the gray boxes. And then you see the 4th grade reading and the 8th grade math in the middle. These are underperforming, and these are noted by the purple cells in those measures. So now we're going to do a quick tables of each of the indicators. So for the kindergarten characteristic or the kindergartner indicator, most of the student groups posted solid gains from 2019 to 2020. But the negative values in the far right column indicate that the student groups are pretty far below the target they needed to reach to be on track to meet the long-term goal. Again, the negative values on the far right column indicate that some student groups are far below the target, but a few are fairly close to the target they needed to reach to be on track. See that the 2020 assessment data is missing. The target shown here corresponds to 2019, which is the most recent year we have data. Again, see the negative values in the far right column, indicating that most student groups are far below the target. See that most of the proficiency rates for 2019 are lower than the rates for 2018. The small declines are still troubling. Again, you'll see here that the 2020 assessment data is missing. On the high school graduation rate indicator, most of the groups are up a little bit over 2 years, and all the groups are up over the 3 most recent years. Here, as you can see, the Asian group and the Hawaiian Pacific Islander student groups are on track, and you'll notice that the difference there is a positive number instead of a negative. So they're above their goal. On the readiness for college coursework indicator, the all students group and a number of the student groups are on track to meet the long-term goal. Groups on track are indicated by the positive numbers in the right-hand column. This is the last of the 6 indicators. And here you'll see that some of the groups have improved a little bit, but some are down a little bit. None of the groups are on track, but the Asian and Black student groups are close to their long-term goal targets. So here's the plan. Staff will be updating the report based on feedback from you and from our partners in anticipation of a December presentation to the EOG OAC, and then submission of the report to the governor and legislature shortly after that. As you generate comments or feedback, please put them in an email to me, and I'll compile those for the TAC and the finalization of the report. Okay, now we're going to shift gears a little and look at how the Washington results compare nationally and to the peer states. The list of peer states in the 2020 report are the same ones we used for the 2018 report. Remember, the legislature's goals are that the indicators should be in the top 10% nationally or comparable to the peer states shown here. So in this overview slide, you can see that for the last two indicators, we don't have good comparison data. And that except for the 8th grade math indicator, none of the measures, at least for the all students group, are in the top 10% nationally, and none are comparable to peer states. So we're going to go through each of the indicators for which we have national and peer state comparisons. So on the kindergarten readiness indicator, we use early childhood education enrollment for the comparison. Washington's preschool enrollment is a little lower than the national average, and definitely not in the top 10% nationally. And it's not comparable and lower than the peer states. We use the 4th grade NAEP in reading for the comparison. The NAEP, or NAEP, is the acronym for the National Assessment of Educational Progress. So on the 4th grade NAEP, Washington's average score is similar to the national average, but not in the top 10% nationally. And the all students group is lower and not comparable to the score for the peer states. However, a number of student groups are similar to the peer states. Here is another view of the 4th grade NAEP and reading scores for all 50 states. See that Washington's placement right near the middle of the rank ordering, and that's shown in the black bar. See at the left side of the chart, 6 of the 9 highest scores are for the peer states that are clearly outperforming Washington, and those are shown in the hatched bars. So for the 8th grade math indicator, we use the 8th grade NAEP and math for the comparison. So you can see here that Washington's average scale score is higher than the national average, but it's not in the top 10% nationally. It is comparable, however, to the peer states. So here's another view of the 8th grade NAEP in math for all 50 states. See Washington's placement near the left side of the rank ordering of states, and that's again shown in the black bar. But see that Washington is not in the top 10% nationally. And Washington's score is just the 5th highest of the peer states. So on the high school graduation indicator, see that Washington's graduation rate, shown in yellow here, is the lowest of the peer states, and those averages are shown in green. And it's lower than the national average that's shown in blue. Remember that many states have different types of high school diplomas and graduation requirements based on total credits, accumulated assessments, and other criteria differ by state. So to wrap this up, the Washington educational system is underperforming relative to the aspirational goals of the legislature. As required in the authorizing legislation, the report includes a number of recommendations that, if implemented, would be expected to bolster the educational outcomes. If you have questions about the data tables of the report, contact me via email in advance of the meeting, or I can clarify any questions you have at the meeting. So thanks for watching this presentation, and I'll see you on Zoom in about a week. Have a great Thanksgiving.